Have you ever noticed how you tend to seek out information that supports what you already believe, while ignoring anything that contradicts it? Maybe it's politics, health, relationships, or even your daily habits. Your brain might already be fooling you. And here's the shocking truth. Confirmation bias is everywhere, silently shaping your thoughts, decisions, and perceptions without you even realizing it. Understanding this hidden mental trap could completely transform the way you think, decide, and interact with the world. Let's start with a question. Have you ever dismissed evidence because it didn't fit your worldview? Or felt strangely satisfied when you stumbled upon information that perfectly reinforced your opinion? That instinct is confirmation bias at work, the brain's natural tendency to prioritize information that aligns with existing beliefs and ignore anything that challenges them. It's not just a quirk. It's a powerful mental shortcut that shapes every choice you make. Here's a fascinating fact. Studies show that when people encounter information confirming their beliefs, the brain's reward centers activate, releasing dopamine, the same chemical involved in motivation and pleasure. On the other hand, contradictory information triggers cognitive discomfort, engaging the anterior cingulate cortex, which monitors conflict and inconsistency. In other words, your brain literally rewards agreement and punishes contradiction. And that's why even smart, rational people can cling to ideas that are demonstrably false. They are neurologically wired to protect their existing beliefs. Now, imagine this. Every time you scroll through social media, read news, or even converse with friends, your brain is filtering information. It's a sieve that amplifies agreement and suppresses conflict. That's why echo chambers exist, why misinformation spreads, and why we often feel certain we're right even when evidence points otherwise. Confirmation bias isn't just psychological, it's a cognitive survival mechanism, evolved to minimize mental effort and reduce the stress of constant questioning. But here's the kicker. In today's hyperconnected, information-saturated world, this ancient mechanism can distort reality, reinforce prejudice, and blind you to truth. Consider this scenario. You strongly believe that a specific diet is the healthiest. Every article, video, or social media post confirming this belief feels validating. Any evidence contradicting it, you dismiss, ignore, or rationalize. Your brain is not lying, it's protecting your mental equilibrium. But here's the secret. This protection comes at a cost. It limits growth, blinds reasoning, and creates a feedback loop that keeps you trapped in a bubble of your own making. Awareness is the only escape. Here's another shocking insight. Confirmation bias doesn't just affect trivial choices, it influences life-altering decisions. From financial investments to career moves, romantic relationships, and even political alignments, the bias subtly manipulates perception. Your brain favors narratives that fit your existing worldview and disregards anything threatening. That's why even highly educated, analytical individuals can make irrational choices. They aren't careless. They're subject to a deeply ingrained cognitive pattern. Recognizing this bias is the first step toward true objectivity. Let's explore the neuroscience. Confirmation bias activates the prefrontal cortex, the amygdala, and the reward system in the brain. When faced with conflicting evidence, the amygdala signals threat, while the prefrontal cortex struggles to reconcile the information with existing beliefs. The resulting discomfort motivates selective attention, rationalization, and memory distortion. Your brain literally rewrites perceived reality to reduce internal conflict. This isn't fiction, it's measurable, repeatable, and universal. And here's the twist. Almost everyone underestimates how strongly they are affected. Now, a psychological twist. Confirmation bias is deeply tied to identity. Beliefs aren't just ideas, they are markers of who we are, what we value, and how we perceive ourselves in relation to others. Threats to beliefs feel like personal threats, triggering defensive reasoning and rationalizations. This explains why debates often fail, why people double down on false claims, and why change can feel nearly impossible. Your brain isn't stubborn, it's defending your self-concept, okay? And it does so with remarkable efficiency. Here's a scenario to illustrate. Imagine you believe you are an environmentally conscious person. Every eco-friendly choice reinforces your identity, while evidence of personal impact, like leaving the lights on, triggers discomfort. To reduce this tension, your brain may exaggerate your positive actions or ignore the negative ones. Over time, this selective perception builds a mental narrative that feels coherent, consistent, and justified. Yet, beneath the surface, distortions accumulate, subtly shaping decisions and behavior without conscious awareness. Now, think about social influence. Confirmation bias isn't just personal, it's social. When surrounded by like-minded individuals, your beliefs are reinforced through group validation. Peer approval amplifies reward signals in the brain, while dissent triggers anxiety and defensive thinking. This is why groupthink occurs, why online communities can radicalize ideas, and why changing collective beliefs is so difficult. Awareness of social amplification is critical to breaking free from bias traps. Here's another fascinating layer. Confirmation bias interacts with memory. Studies show that people often remember information that supports existing beliefs more accurately than contradictory information. Memories of events, conversations, and outcomes are subtly reshaped to fit the narrative your brain wants to maintain. This isn't conscious deception, it's a cognitive mechanism designed to preserve coherence, reduce conflict, and maintain identity integrity. But here's the key. Over time, repeated distortions create a reinforced mental model that is resistant to change, even in the face of overwhelming evidence. Now, the real question: can you overcome it? Yes, but it requires deliberate strategies. First, awareness is essential. Recognizing when your brain is favoring confirmation over contradiction is the starting point. Second, actively seek disconfirming evidence. Challenge assumptions, explore opposing viewpoints, and question your reasoning. Third, engage reflective thinking. Pause before forming judgments, analyze emotional reactions, and separate identity from beliefs. These steps help rewire neural pathways, promoting balanced judgment and reducing bias over time. And here's the kicker: the process is gradual, cumulative, and profoundly transformative. Here's a powerful insight few realize. Even subtle interventions can dramatically reduce confirmation bias. For example, when making decisions, write down arguments for and against your position. Actively consider the consequences of being wrong. Discuss ideas with people who think differently. Your brain responds to this structured cognitive conflict by strengthening reasoning, expanding perspective, and improving decision-making. The more you practice, the more your default mental state shifts from automatic agreement to critical evaluation. Now, consider the stakes. Confirmation bias doesn't just distort thoughts, it shapes societies. Political polarization, financial bubbles, misinformation, and cultural conflicts are all magnified by the human tendency to seek validating evidence. Recognizing the bias is not just personal empowerment, it's social responsibility. By questioning assumptions, examining evidence critically, and embracing cognitive discomfort, you can make better choices, influence others ethically, and even contribute to collective understanding. And here's the neuroscience secret: repeated exposure to diverse perspectives literally changes the brain. Neural circuits responsible for conflict detection, analytical thinking, and empathy are strengthened. Dopamine pathways reward balanced judgment, reducing emotional reactivity to disconfirming evidence. In essence, confronting bias isn't just intellectual, it's neuroplastic. Your brain adapts, improves, and becomes more resilient to deception, manipulation, and self-deception. Now, a psychological twist. Confirmation bias also affects creativity. When the brain clings to familiar beliefs, ideas stagnate. When you actively challenge assumptions, explore new possibilities, embrace conflicting perspectives, novel connections form. Creativity, innovation, and insight emerge. The very bias that limits perception can become a catalyst for growth, but only when consciously managed. Here's a scenario to drive it home. Imagine evaluating a controversial topic. Your initial instinct favors your existing view. Now, intentionally explore alternative evidence, engage thoughtful debate, and reflect on potential errors. Discomfort arises. Yes, but so does awareness. Over time, repeated practice rewires thought patterns. Your brain no longer automatically filters out contradictions. It balances evidence, integrates perspectives, and makes decisions aligned with truth rather than comfort. Finally, the ultimate revelation. Confirmation bias isn't just a limitation, it's a doorway to mastery. By noticing bias, questioning assumptions, and seeking contradictory evidence, you train your brain to think with clarity and insight. The mind, once a trickster, becomes a precise tool. The secret, managing confirmation bias, improves your decisions, relationships, and life. When a comforting thought arises, ask, am I seeing reality or just what I want? This rewires perception and strengthens cognition. Confirmation bias isn't a trap, it's a signal. The twist, insightful minds use it strategically, turning mental tricks into mastery.